Why do some individuals find it so challenging to genuinely celebrate your transformation? Picture this scenario. You've just secured that promotion you've been working toward, or perhaps you've launched that business venture you've always envisioned. You're glowing with satisfaction, eager to share your joy with those you consider close companions. Yet something peculiar occurs. Instead of authentic congratulations, you encounter forced smiles, sarcastic remarks disguised as humor, or worse still, an uncomfortable silence that speaks volumes. Welcome to reality, where your personal development becomes the harshest mirror for those who've chosen to remain stagnant. Jealousy doesn't always arrive with shouting or direct threats. No. The most dangerous envy is the kind that hides behind familiar faces, the type that masquerades as friendship while stabbing you in the back. 1. The reflection. Nobody wants to face when you choose to evolve, when you dare to shatter the patterns that keep most people in their comfort zones. You automatically become a threat. Not a physical threat, but something far worse for the ego of the mediocre. You become living proof that it was possible all along, that the excuses they've been using for years were nothing more than that, excuses. According to Stoic philosophy, what truly affects us isn't others' actions, but our interpretation of those actions. Epictetus taught us that suffering doesn't come from external events, but from our judgments about those events. This means when someone displays jealousy toward your progress, the problem isn't you, it's their inability to process their own mediocrity. Average people live in a world of constant comparisons. Their self-worth depends entirely on maintaining the same level as those around them. When someone from their circle decides to rise, their entire mental framework crumbles. Suddenly, their daily justifications for why they can't progress collapse in the face of your success. Marcus Aurelius demonstrated that what is good by nature doesn't need permission to exist. Your growth, your ambition, your refusal to settle for mediocrity require nobody's approval. However, the average human mind isn't prepared for this reality. They prefer dragging you back to their level rather than making the effort to climb to yours. Recognize the warning signs: constant jokes about your new personality, passive-aggressive comments about how you've changed, invitations that mysteriously stop coming, messages that go unanswered. These aren't accidents. They're symptoms of minds that cannot tolerate seeing someone break the chains they've placed on themselves. The first Stoic lesson for handling this situation is simple yet powerful. Stop taking others' envy personally. When someone cannot celebrate your success, they're revealing their own limitations, not yours. Their inability to applaud your growth is a diagnosis of their own mental health, not a verdict on your worth. Seneca taught us that whoever constantly seeks approval lives as a slave. The moment you begin modifying your decisions based on how the envious might react, you've lost your freedom. You've allowed others' mediocrity to dictate the pace of your growth. Here's the truth nobody tells you. Your social circle will change, and that's perfectly fine. People who truly value you will find ways to grow with you, or at least respect you enough not to sabotage your progress. Those who cannot do this simply reveal they were never true allies in your life. Don't waste time trying to explain your ambitions to minds that have decided conformity is a virtue. Don't justify your hunger for growth to those who've made mediocrity their religion. As Stoic philosophy reminds us, the wise person doesn't bother convincing those who don't wish to be convinced. If this content is helping you see things more clearly, like the video and subscribe to the channel. We have much more to explore together. 2. The art of strategic silence. The envy of the mediocre has a particular characteristic. It's cowardly, yet noisy. It doesn't manifest in direct confrontations because that would require courage, and courage is precisely what's lacking in those who live in mediocrity. Instead, It attacks through indirect channels, poisonous jokes, calculated absences, uncomfortable silences, and that specialty of the resentful, destructive irony. Stoic philosophers understood this dynamic perfectly. They knew that reacting with anger or frustration to these provocations is exactly what the envious person is seeking. When you explode, when you justify yourself, when you enter their game, you give them exactly what they need. Confirmation that they can affect you, that you remain vulnerable to their emotional manipulation. Epictetus reminded us that we have absolute control over our reactions, but no control over others' actions. This distinction is crucial when facing envy. You cannot control someone feeling envious of you, but you have total control over how you respond to that envy. Strategic silence isn't passivity, it's power in its purest form. When someone launches a sarcastic comment about your success and you simply smile and change the subject, you're demonstrating a level of emotional control that the mediocre cannot comprehend. Your tranquility in the face of their provocations frustrates them more than any aggressive response you could give. According to Stoicism, the elevated mind doesn't stoop to fight in the mud with those who've chosen to live there. This doesn't mean you're a coward or that you allow direct abuse. It means you're intelligent enough to recognize which battles are worth fighting and which are merely distractions designed to steal your energy. Transform your internal dialogue. Instead of thinking, they're jealous of me, think, my growth makes those who've decided to stagnate uncomfortable. This subtle difference removes you from the victim role and places you in the position of power you actually occupy. You're not a victim of their envy. You're the catalyst that exposes their own dissatisfaction. Marcus Aurelius demonstrated the importance of keeping our dignity intact regardless of others' behavior. When you respond to pettiness with elegance, when you maintain your composure in the face of calculated provocations, you're operating from a level of consciousness that the envious cannot reach. Establish subtle but firm boundaries. Stop sharing your plans and projects with those who've already demonstrated inability to celebrate your victories. This isn't being secretive, it's being strategic. Your energy is limited and valuable. Don't waste it trying to obtain validation from contaminated sources. The most powerful strategy is becoming emotionally inaccessible to their provocations. When someone makes a comment designed to bother you and you remain unperturbed, you're sending a clear message. You no longer have the power to affect my emotional state. This is the freedom that controllers and manipulators fear most. Seneca emphasized that the wise person doesn't seek revenge because revenge requires lowering yourself to their level, and the wise person has higher objectives to pursue. Your best revenge against envy isn't a cruel response. It's your continued success combined with your unshakable inner peace. Remember that every time you react emotionally to their provocations, you're giving them exactly what they seek. Proof that you remain controllable. The day you stop reacting, that you maintain your focus on your goals regardless of their comments, you'll have won a victory they can never take from you. 3. Your greatness that needs no applause. Here we arrive at the heart of Stoic philosophy applied to real life. The capacity to do what's right, to pursue excellence, to grow constantly without needing external validation. Marcus Aurelius taught us that the reward of a good action isn't the recognition we receive, but the inherent good of having performed it. This is probably the most difficult lesson to internalize in our society, obsessed with social approval. We've been conditioned to measure our worth by the quantity of likes, congratulations, and recognition we receive. But true greatness operates on a completely different frequency. The Stoics lead us to understand that when you depend on external applause to feel valuable, you've placed your self-esteem in others' hands. You've made your inner peace hostage to outside opinions. And most dangerously of all, you've given the mediocre the power to stop your growth simply by withdrawing their approval. Imagine for a moment what would happen if you were completely immune to lack of recognition. If you could work on your projects, improve your skills, build your future, without needing anyone to applaud you in the process. Do you realize the level of freedom this would represent? According to Stoicism, the wise person finds satisfaction in the very process of growing and improving. They don't need others to validate their progress because they can objectively evaluate their own development. This emotional self-sufficiency is what most terrifies the envious, the possibility that you no longer need their opinion. Seneca showed us that true wealth isn't in having much, but in needing little. Applied to our topic, true strength isn't in receiving much approval, but in needing little. When you reach this point, you become practically invincible against envy and emotional sabotage. The envy of the mediocre cannot resist constancy. They can mock your project for weeks, months, even years, but when you continue forward regardless of their comments, when your progress continues whether they applaud or not, something inside them breaks. They realize their opinions don't have the power they thought they had over you. Epictetus reminded us that nobody can hurt you without your consent. This applies perfectly to envy. Nobody can stop your growth with their negative comments unless you give them that power. The day you decide your personal evolution is more important than the emotional comfort of those around you, you'll have taken the most important step toward true freedom. Create goals that don't depend on external recognition. Instead of seeking others to notice your growth, focus on objective metrics that only you can evaluate. Are you more disciplined than last month? Have you acquired new skills? Have you overcome fears that previously paralyzed you? These are the true measures of progress. Stoic philosophy teaches us that the wise person doesn't need to explain themselves to anyone. Your growth speaks for itself. Your results are your best argument. Your consistency is your best response to all negative comments. When someone questions your path, your life itself becomes the most eloquent answer. The mediocre expect you to justify yourself, to explain why you deserve what you've achieved, to prove your success is legitimate according to their standards. But here's the secret that will change your perspective forever. You owe them no explanation. Your life is yours to live. Your decisions are yours to make, and your growth is yours to pursue. Marcus Aurelius demonstrated that true power resides in the capacity to remain faithful to our principles regardless of external circumstances. When you can grow, evolve, and triumph without needing anyone else to understand or approve your process, you've reached a level of freedom that very few experience. Envy will always be the tribute that mediocrity pays to excellence. When someone feels envious of you, they're involuntarily acknowledging that you've achieved something they haven't been able to or haven't had the courage to attempt. In a sense, their envy is a disguised compliment, though they'd never admit it. Don't allow the absence of applause to discourage you. Some of the most important moments of your growth will occur in solitude, without witnesses, without fanfare. Learn to find satisfaction in silent progress, in the small daily victories that nobody else notices, but that bring you closer each day to the person you want to become. The true Stoic understands that their greatest responsibility is to themselves, to be better today than yesterday, wiser, stronger, more resilient. If others benefit from their example, excellent. If others feel envious of their progress, it's irrelevant. Their focus remains unwavering, continuous growth with or without an audience. Emotional freedom begins the day you decide your energy is too valuable to waste, feeding the expectations of those who've chosen mediocrity as a lifestyle. That day, you become someone truly free, someone who can grow without limits because they no longer need anyone's permission to shine. The greatest demonstration of strength is continuing to grow without needing to justify yourself to anyone. Your evolution doesn't need approval from those who've decided to remain stagnant. Are you ready to cut the ties that keep you bound to others' mediocrity? Do you have the courage to shine even though others feel uncomfortable with your light? Tell me in the comments, what has been your experience with others' envy when you've begun to grow? Like this video if it's helped you see things from a new perspective. Subscribe to the channel for more personal growth content with classical wisdom, and share this message with someone who needs to hear these words. Remember, your greatness doesn't need mediocrity's approval. It's time to act accordingly.